Look, let's have a heart-to-heart. We're deep into 2026, and the golden age of just buy anything is officially dead. In the last few years, the cost of living has gone up, the price of a box of 9mm creeping back up, and shooters are getting a lot more selective about what they put in their safes. I'm spending a lot of time in the back rooms of gun shops and talking to armorers who are seeing a massive influx of trade-ins and warranty returns. The industry is at a crossroads. We've got some companies pushing the envelope with incredible optics-ready platforms, and then we've got the others, the ones still trying to sell us outdated designs, cost-cut components, and pure marketing gimmicks. If you're a new shooter or even a seasoned veteran, it's easy to get sucked in by a flashy YouTube ad or a low price tag. But a cheap gun that doesn't run is the most expensive thing you'll ever buy. Today, I'm pulling back the curtain. We're not just looking at bad guns. We're looking at platforms that the market has collectively decided to abandon because their failure rate has become impossible to ignore. I'm talking about metallurgical flaws, catastrophic malfunctions under heat, and ergonomics that seem designed to fail. We're going to get nerdy, we're going to talk ballistics, and we're going to talk about why these 10 firearms are rotting on the shelves in 2026. If you're thinking about spending your hard-earned money this weekend, stop. Watch this first. Number 10, Taurus Spectrum, a firearm that was supposed to be the Apple of the concealed carry world, the Taurus Spectrum. When this 380 ACP was announced, it was hyped as a fusion of fashion and function, designed from the ground up for the subcompact market. But here in 2026, it has become a textbook case of why you don't let a graphic designer build a life-saving tool. Let's dive into the mechanical guts of this thing. The Spectrum utilizes a striker-fired, double-action-only system, but the execution is fundamentally flawed. The primary issue is the internal sear geometry. Over time, or even straight out of the box, we see a massive inconsistency in striker energy. This leads to the dreaded light primer strike. You're at the range, you got a live round in the chamber, you pull that long, mushy trigger, and click, nothing. In a high-stress self-defense situation, that click is the loudest sound you'll ever hear. We've tested this with everything from cheap-range reloads to high-end federal premium defensive loads, and the Spectrum is consistently picky. It's a reliability nightmare. Then there's the issue of the soft-touch overmolding. Taurus wanted to make the gun comfortable and colorful, but they didn't account for the chemistry of sweat, holster friction, and gun oil. By 2026, we are seeing these grips literally melt or delaminate. It becomes sticky, it traps dirt, and it makes it nearly impossible to get a clean, consistent draw from a Kydex holster. From a shooting perspective, the bore axis is high for such a small gun, leading to a snappy, unpleasant recoil impulse that makes follow-up shots a chore. The slide is made of a lower-grade stainless steel that we've seen show signs of premature peening around the ejection port after only 500 rounds. When you compare this to the modern micro-compacts from SIG or Smith & Wesson that offer double the capacity and 1,000% more reliability, you realize why nobody is buying the Spectrum anymore. It's a failed experiment that belongs in the bargain bin of history. If you see one for $200, keep walking. Your life is worth more than a colorful paperweight that won't cycle. Number 9, Mossberg Patriot. We have a rifle that occupies a lot of shelf space in big box stores, but very little space in the hearts of serious marksmen, the Mossberg Patriot. Now, Mossberg knows shotguns better than almost anyone, but when they tried to capture the budget bolt-action rifle market, they cut corners that just shouldn't be cut. By 2026, the budget excuse has worn thin because the competition is just too good. The first thing you'll notice when you cycle the bolt on a Patriot is how loose and gritty it feels. We're talking about massive tolerances in the bolt-to-receiver fitment. This isn't just an aesthetic issue, it's a performance killer. That slop in the bolt leads to inconsistent lockup, which is why we see these rifles struggling to hold even a 2 MOA group with match-grade ammunition. In an era where a budget Ruger or Savage can easily punch sub-MOA holes, the Patriot feels like a relic from a different time. But the real deal breaker in 2026 is the metallurgy and the finish. We are seeing these barrels and receivers develop surface rust if you even think about a humid day. The matte blue finish is incredibly thin and offers almost zero corrosion resistance. Then there's the stock, a hollow, injection molded plastic that has so much flex in the forend that it often touches the barrel, completely negating the free float design they advertise. I've also seen a recurring issue with the plastic magazine well and the latches. They are fragile. One cold morning in the deer woods and a slightly forceful mag change can snap those plastic tabs right off, turning your bolt-action rifle into a very slow single shot. When you can spend $50 more and get a rifle that will last a lifetime, nobody is willing to gamble on the Patriot anymore. It's a rifle built to a price point, not a standard, and it shows. Number 8, Remington 8 70. Post-2020 versions. We need to be very clear here. We are not talking about the legendary Wingmasters from the 1970s. We are talking about the new production models and the leftovers from the bankruptcy era that are still clogging up the secondary market in 2026. The primary reason nobody is buying these new 870s is a total lack of quality control. The most common catastrophic failure we see on the range is the stuck shell syndrome. Because the chambers are so poorly polished and finished, the brass on a fired shell expands and becomes physically wedged in the barrel. You'll see guys literally slamming the buttstock of their shotgun against the ground just to get the action to open. That is not something you want to deal with when a home intruder is coming down the hallway. Technically speaking, the internal components have also taken a dive. We're seeing a shift toward metal injection molded or MIM parts for the extractor and the sear. These parts are inherently more brittle than the machined steel components of old. I've seen extractors literally snap in half during heavy use. Furthermore, the finish on these guns, often called express finish, is essentially a magnet for oxidation. You can wipe it down with oil on a Friday, and by Monday morning, you'll see those dreaded orange freckles appearing on the magazine tube. In 2026, shooters are flocking to the Mossberg 590 or the Beretta 1301 because they want a shotgun that actually cycles and doesn't require a rust prevention ritual every 12 hours. The Remington 870 name is being kept on life support by nostalgia alone, but the savvy buyers have already moved on. Number 7, Century Arms VSKA. We are diving into the world of the AK platform, specifically one that has been the subject of more heated range debates than almost any other. Now, Century marketed this as their heavy-duty American-made AK featuring S7 tool steel for the critical components like the bolt carrier, the front trunnion, and the feed ramp. But as we sit here in 2026, the consensus from the AK community is loud and clear. Nobody is buying the hype anymore, and they certainly aren't buying the rifle. Let's talk about the Metallurgy, because that is where the VSKA's reputation goes to die. S7 tool steel is incredibly hard, which sounds good on paper, but in the world of AK manufacturing, hardness without the proper heat treatment leads to brittleness. On the range, we've seen these front trunnions, the very heart of the rifle that holds the barrel and the bolt lockup, develop micro cracks over high round counts. Worse, the peening we see on the bolt tails is significant. After just 1,000 rounds, the back of the bolt often looks like a mushroomed piece of lead rather than a precision machined component. When your headspace starts shifting because the metal is literally deforming under the pressure of the 7.62 by 39 round, you aren't just looking at a jam, you're looking at a potential catastrophic explosion inches from your face. Beyond the internal safety concerns, the fit and finish of the VSKA in 2026 feels incredibly dated. We are seeing canted front sight posts that are so far off center you can't even zero the rifle at 50 yards without drifting the post completely out of the hood. The rivets, which should be crushed perfectly to hold the receiver together, are often undercrushed or deformed, leading to receiver flex that ruins accuracy. In a market where Palmetto State Armory has perfected the American AK and Zastava is importing battle-proven Serbian rifles with chrome-lined barrels for a similar price, the VSKA has no legs to stand on. Serious shooters are tired of just okay AKs that might lose headspace before they even finish their first case of ammo. In 2026, if it isn't built to last 10,000 rounds, it's not worth the steel it's made of. The VSKA is a hard pass for anyone who knows how an AK is supposed to run. Number 6. Kel-Tec PF9. We're looking at a firearm that was once a pioneer but has now been completely left in the dust by modern engineering. Back in the day, this was one of the thinnest, lightest 9mm pistols on the market, and it paved the way for the micro-compact revolution. But in 2026, the PF9 is a perfect example of why being first doesn't mean being the best. Nobody is buying these anymore because, frankly, we've realized that carrying a gun shouldn't feel like a chore and shooting one shouldn't feel like a punishment. Let's get into the technical reasons why the PF9 is rotting on the shelves. First and foremost is the shootability, or lack thereof. Because the gun is so incredibly light, weighing in at just 12.7 ounces unloaded, the felt recoil is absolutely punishing. In technical terms, the reciprocating mass of the slide is so low that it doesn't soak up any of the kinetic energy from a standard 9mm round. This results in a snappy muzzle flip that makes quick, accurate follow-up shots almost impossible for the average shooter. By the time you've fired half a magazine, your palm is stinging and your grip has likely shifted due to the aggressive cheese grater texture on the polymer frame. Mechanically, the PF9 shows its age with its internal design. It uses a hammer-fired, double-action-only system that feels archaic in 2026. The trigger pull is long, heavy, and has a reset that requires you to almost fully let off the blade before you can fire again. In a world where every modern subcompact has a crisp, striker-fired trigger with a short reset, the Kel-Tec feels like a relic from the 90s. We've also seen significant issues with the long-term durability of the aluminum frame rails. Because they are thin to save weight, they tend to show excessive wear and peening after just a few hundred rounds of high-pressure defensive ammo. Then there's the reliability factor. The PF9 is notorious for limp wristing malfunctions. If your grip isn't absolutely perfect, the slide won't cycle fully, leading to constant stovepipes and failures to feed. In 2026, why would anyone carry a 7-round pistol that hurts to shoot and is finicky with ammo when you can get a SIG 36.5 or a Glock 43X that carries more rounds and runs like a sewing machine? The PF9's time has passed and the market knows it. Number 5, Kimber Custom 2. A name that used to be the gold standard for out-of-the-box 1911 performance, but in 2026, it has become a cautionary tale of brand dilution and declining quality control, the Kimber Custom 2. There was a time when owning a Kimber meant you had arrived, but today, these pistols are sitting in display cases like relics of a forgotten era. The custom in the name has started to feel more like a marketing buzzword than a manufacturing reality. Let's tear into the technical side, because this is where the Custom 2 really falls apart for the modern shooter. The biggest bone of contention in 2026 is Kimber's continued reliance on metal injection molded or MIM internal components. We are talking about the hammer, the sear, and the disconnector. In a pistol that often commands a premium price tag over $1,000, seeing MIM parts in the fire control group is unacceptable when the competition is moving toward fully machined tool steel. We've seen these MIM sears wear unevenly after only a few thousand rounds, which ruins that crisp 1911 trigger break and can even lead to dangerous follow-the-slide malfunctions. Then we have the infamous break-in period. Kimber still tells customers they need to fire 500 rounds of quality ammunition before the gun is considered reliable. In 2026, that is an absurd requirement. When a box of 45 ACP is costing you what it does today, asking a customer to spend hundreds of dollars just to see if their gun actually works is an insult. This break-in is often just a cover for tight, inconsistent tolerances in the slide-to-frame fit and the barrel bushing. I've seen brand new Custom 2s with 3-point binds where the barrel hood doesn't lock up correctly, leading to constant failures to return to battery. Furthermore, the external finishes on the lower tier Custom 2 models, like the matte black, have proven to be incredibly fragile. We are seeing holster wear after just a few weeks of light use, and if you live in a humid climate, you'd better keep a coat of oil on that slide daily, or you'll be looking at surface oxidation by the weekend. In a market where companies like Thesis and Springfield are offering forged frames and slides with better reliability for hundreds less, or where Staccato has redefined the high-end market, the Kimber Custom 2 is stuck in no man's land. It's an overpriced 1911 that relies on a reputation it hasn't earned in over a decade. Nobody is buying it because the Kimber magic has officially run out. Number 4, Glock 44. We have a pistol that carries the most famous name in the industry but fails to live up to the legendary reliability that made the brand famous, the Glock 44. Now, on paper, a Glock 19 size pistol chambered in .22 LR sounds like the ultimate training tool. But in 2026, after years of range reports and frustrated owners, the market has spoken. People are walking right past the 44 and picking up a Taurus TX22 or a SIG P322 instead. The primary technical failure of the Glock 44 lies in its hybrid slide design. Because the .22 LR cartridge is so low pressure, a standard steel Glock slide would be too heavy to cycle. To solve this, Glock used a polymer slide with steel reinforcements. However, this has led to a major pickiness when it comes to ammunition. This gun is notorious for failures to extract and failures to feed, unless you are using high-velocity, premium, copper-plated round nose ammo. If you try to run bulk pack, lead round nose, the kind of stuff people actually want to shoot in a .22, you are looking at a Jam-O-Matic experience. I've seen shooters spend more time clearing malfunctions than actually practicing their draw stroke. But the real deal breaker we're seeing in 2026 is the magazine capacity and the feed geometry. While the competition has moved to 15, 20, or even 25 round magazines for their .22 caliber trainers, Glock's stuck with a 10 round single stack design. In a world where high capacity rimfires are the norm, 10 rounds feels like a joke. Beyond that, the feed ramps on the Glock 44 are notoriously steep and sensitive. We've seen numerous cases where the slide has actually cracked or the extractor has blown out due to out-of-battery discharges, something that is far too common with this particular model compared to other Rimfire pistols. When you realize you're paying the Glock tax, meaning you're paying a premium for the name, but you're getting a gun that is less reliable and has half the capacity of its rivals, it's easy to see why nobody is buying the 44 this year. It's a training tool that teaches you more about clearing malfunctions than it does about marksmanship. If you want a Glock, buy a 19. If you want a 22, look elsewhere. Number 3, Bond Arms Derringers, traditional two-shot models. A piece of hardware that looks cool in a Western movie, but is practically a liability in a modern defensive context, the traditional two-shot Bond Arms Derringers. Now, don't get me wrong, Bond Arms makes an incredibly overbuilt, high-quality product. The metallurgy is top-tier stainless steel, but here in 2026, the Derringer concept has officially hit a wall. Nobody is buying these for anything other than a novelty paperweight because, tactically speaking, they make almost 0 sense. Let's look at the manual of arms for this thing. You are carrying a hunk of stainless steel that weighs almost 20 ounces. That is as much as a fully loaded Glock 43X. But you only have 2 rounds of 45 Colt or 4 to 10 bore on tap. In 2026, the average defensive encounter is evolving, and the idea of relying on a single-action 2-shot hand cannon is just bad math. To fire it, you have to manually cock that heavy hammer for every single shot. Under stress, with adrenaline dumping through your system, fine motor skills go out the window. I have seen guys on the range fumble that hammer or worse have their thumb slip, leading to a failure to engage. Technically, the recoil on these small frame beasts is what we call unmanageable. When you fire a 3-inch 4 to 10 slug out of a grip that you can only get 1.5 fingers on, the gun wants to leap out of your hand. The muzzle flip is so violent that your quick second shot is anything but quick. You are spending 3 to 4 seconds reacquiring your target and recocking the hammer. In that same time frame, a modern micro-compact user has put 10 rounds of 9mm on target and is already looking for cover. Furthermore, the accuracy beyond 3 yards is abysmal. Because the barrels are so short and the sights are rudimentary at best, you are essentially carrying a get-off-me gun that is harder to shoot than a snub-nosed revolver, but offers 80% less capacity. In 2026, with the rise of super reliable, high-capacity sub-compacts that weigh less and shoot flatter, the Bond Arms Derringer has been relegated to the collector-only bin. It is a solution in search of a problem that no longer exists. If you are buying a gun to save your life, you need capacity and shootability, 2 things this platform simply cannot provide. Number 2, IWI TS12. A platform that looks like it belongs on the set of a sci-fi movie, but in 2026, it is primarily known for being the most over-engineered headache in the shotgun world. Now, IWI usually hits home runs with their bullpups, but the TS12 is a swing and a miss that has left a lot of owners frustrated. The market has shifted toward high-speed, reliable semi-autos like the 1301, leaving this rotating magazine behemoth in the dust. Let's talk about the technical complexity, because that is where the TS12 starts to fail. This is a gas-regulated, short-stroke gas piston system that feeds from 3 separate 5-round tubular magazines that you have to manually rotate. In theory, having 15 rounds of 12-gauge on tap is amazing. In practice, the manual of arms is a disaster. If you don't rotate that magazine with the exact right amount of force and timing, you can induce a deadhead jam, where a shell is partially released but the carrier isn't ready to receive it. Clearing a malfunction on a bullpup shotgun with this much internal plumbing is a nightmare that usually requires tools and a lot of swearing. From a mechanical standpoint, the TS12 is incredibly ammo sensitive. The gas system is supposed to be adjustable, but we've seen that even on the heavy setting, it struggles to cycle standard low brass birdshot or even some lighter buckshot loads. In 2026, if a tactical shotgun can't run whatever shells you find on the shelf, it's not a tactical shotgun, it's a range toy. We've also seen recurring issues with the lifter springs and the magazine indexing pins wearing out prematurely. Once those small internal parts lose their tension, the gun becomes a 15-round single shot. Then there is the ergonomics and the weight. When this thing is fully loaded with 15 rounds of 1-ounce slugs or buckshot, it is incredibly back-heavy and bulky. It's like trying to swing a cinder block around your living room. The height over bore is massive, meaning your point of aim and point of impact at close ranges where a shotgun is supposed to shine is completely different. You're having to do mental math on your holdover while trying to manage a complicated reloading sequence. In 2026, shooters are realizing that more rounds doesn't mean better gun if the mechanical heart of the system is prone to failure. The TS-12 is a complex solution to a problem that a simple tube extension on a reliable semi-auto already solved decades ago. Number 1. Century Arms C39 V2, the number one firearm you should avoid in 2026 at all costs. The Century Arms C39 V2. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. It's a milled receiver, it should be a tank. But in reality, the C39 V2 is a masterclass in how poor metallurgy can turn a beautiful looking rifle into a ticking time bomb. Let's get into the technical nightmare that is the C39 V2. The AK platform relies on the hardness and durability of its bolt and front trunnion to contain thousands of pounds of pressure inches from your face. The problem with the V2 is that Century chose to use a proprietary American-sourced steel that was improperly heat-treated. What we are seeing in 2026, as these rifles hit higher round counts, is a catastrophic failure of the headspace. The bolt tail mushrooms so badly it looks like it was beaten with a sledgehammer, and the locking lugs on the bolt actually start to shear off or deform. When that happens, the rifle loses its ability to lock the cartridge firmly into the chamber. On the range, we've seen these rifles fail no-go gauges in as little as 500 to 1,000 rounds. If you keep shooting a rifle with failed headspace, you aren't just looking at a jam buddies, you are looking at an out-of-battery explosion. In 2026, there is absolutely zero excuse for this. We have amazing American-made AKs from companies like PSA that use proper forged components, and we have the Zastava M70 or WBP rifles that are built to military specifications. Buying a C39 V2 is like buying a Ferrari with a wooden engine. It might look pretty on the outside, but it is fundamentally incapable of doing its job safely over the long haul. It is the king of the do not buy list for a reason. Stay away, keep your face intact, and buy a rifle that uses forged steel where it actually matters. Your gear is a silent partner in your safety. In 2026, we don't have the luxury of hoping a firearm works. Whether you are a first-time buyer or a guy with a safe full of high-end builds, the lesson here is simple. Stop buying the marketing and start buying the track record. Every gun we talked about today has a common thread. They chose cost-cutting and gimmicks over the fundamental laws of mechanical reliability and human ergonomics. Don't let a low price tag or a fancy sales pitch convince you to be the guinea pig for a flawed design. If you're going to bet your life on a piece of cold steel and polymer, make sure it's a bet you're actually going to win. I want to hear from you guys in the comments. Have you had a nightmare experience with one of these shelf warmers, or did you somehow find a spectrum that actually cycles? Let's get the conversation going down below and keep each other informed so nobody else gets burned by these lemons.